So let's take a look at lesson 2 in Unit 3 of 7th grade math, and we're looking at exploring circles. In this lesson, we're really diving into the big vocabulary and ideas of radius and diameter and circumference and area, and really developing a good understanding of those vocabulary words and how to use them. So there's a lot in this lesson. I'd be surprised if it's doable within a class period, but it may be worth finishing up the next day because I think there's a lot of good practice to just reinforce those concepts. So the first warm-up is pretty interesting. They want students to construct figure C that looks like a combination of A and B, but a little bit more like A than B. So there's lots of right answers to this. You're really looking at student thinking and how they're justifying why their answer is a good answer. So it's listening for existing vocabulary, so it's kind of an AFL for that. In activity 2, you're going to give each group a different set of circles. And so this is what they look like. I guess they're not all circles, but looking at these, there are lots of circles here. But we also have some non-circles, so students are going to sort those. But you kind of step them through this activity. So in step 1, students look at them and decide how they could sort them into 2 groups and decide on what those 2 groups are. As a class, come to the point where you're doing circles and non-circles. And then students are going to take turns putting a card into one of the 2 categories and justifying it to their partners. And then after that, and you've had a chance to go around and look at everyone's, you're going to create a chart about some characteristics that all circles have in common. There's an example of that in the complete lesson plan. And then ask the students to put circular objects in order from smallest to largest. And they used vague wording there so that some students may do it based on radius, some diameter, some circumference, some area, lots of different things. They may struggle some because some of those are actually 3-dimensional shapes, like the basketball isn't really a circle. So some good conversations can come from that. And then wrapping up with select one of the pictures of the circle and what are some ways you could measure the actual size of that circle. So that's going to be lead into the synthesis for this activity, which is really you coming up with a lot of the vocabulary and clarifying all of that so that kids are clear on that. This might even be a good time to come up with an anchor chart and use that here and then continue to refer back to it in the coming days. Then in activity 3, students are going to have to kind of reason with those ideas of circumference, radius, and diameter and decide which, based on the 3 of these pictures, referring to the pictures they already have, which pictures each person is referring to, if it's a radius or if it's a diameter or if it's a circumference, and kind of justify that. So I think there's a lot of good conversation that will come from that. There's a lot of good scaffolding questions and discussion questions also in the complete lesson plan. And then this activity 4 is an optional activity, but I really like it. I think it's a nice one. Students, it's a great way to do some work with a compass without actually getting a compass out. So the first thing that students are asked to do is draw circle A with a diameter of 6. So probably what students will do is something like that, and then click draw circle and it will make that, but then they can measure to check their work. So they drag the green right onto the, oops, I'm dragging the wrong thing now. Center of the circle, try that again. And once it's on the center, they can turn it and really measure that circle and see that from 10 to 16 is 6, but that's a radius. All the way across is twice that, it's 12. And so I think it's a good way to do some work with a compass and measuring it, and it's pretty clear and less likely to have errors if they can work through that. So that may be worth coming back to a little bit later on. And then the summary and the cool down is good as well.